Hello, grade 6. Today's lesson it's about the Nile Valley. The land of the Nile Valley, the Nile River is the world's longest river. The ancient land, once called Lower Egypt, lies at the Nile's mouth and the Mediterranean Sea, and is made up mainly of the Nile Delta. A delta is a triangular piece of rich land formed from soil deposited at the mouth of some rivers. The higher land to the south was known as Upper Egypt. The river or the Nile River cuts across the arid or dry desert known as Sahara. Then we have only on the fertile lands by the Nile could early Egyptians grow crops or wheat, and barley. To the ancient Egyptian, Nile was the river or the giver of life. The authority of the early Egyptian leaders was based on their ability to provide water for crops. Over time, they built more complex irrigation system, and we already learned what is the meaning of irrigation. Irrigation, it is to move the water from the river into their fields or into the land towards civilization. The early Egyptians were developing an advanced civilization in towns along the Nile, so they built temples as tombs to hold the bodies of the rulers who had died. Early writing appears on these temples and tombs. They mined copper for tool making and gold for decorative art. So the farming along the Nile made all these advances possible. In the fertile soils of the Nile Delta and the Nile Valley, farmers grow surplus crops of wheat and barley. They use donkeys to carry grain to the storehouses in towns. The Egyptians ground the wheat into flour for making bread. Having a surplus of grain allowed farmers in some towns to use the surplus grain for trade. Trade took place on the Nile River, and trade and travel along